What's up, you guys? Good morning, good evening, whatever applies to you. Hope you are staying safe. First of all, excuse the sound in the background because we are not living in a sort of isolated area. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about something that you can utilize as a preventative mechanism, or you can utilize as something along the way of your recovery from an addiction. Not super early on, because early on the most important thing is to get yourself into the groove rather than dialing everything in, right? So this video is more so about dialing everything in, right? So today I'm going to talk about how to retain dopamine sensitivity, right? This is an important topic to talk about because dopamine is, abusing your dopamine receptors, abusing your dopamine stores is what leads you to an addiction, right? I will explain that claim partly in this video, and I will explain that fully as the videos come, right? So today we are talking about 4 subtopics. First, what's dopamine? Second, what kills your sensitivity to it? Third, why is the sensitivity so important? And fourth, do's and do nots to retain sensitivity. In this video, I'm going to talk about everything in sort of detail, as long as it is simple enough to understand for common people, right? So that's the main target, main focus of this video. We are starting off with the first subtopic today, which is what's dopamine, right? There should be an understanding what dopamine really does in order to understand this whole thing, right? So first of all, I have to explain to you what dopamine is in simplest terms, right? So dopamine is basically the hormone of desire, right? That's the hormone that dictates how excited you are to do a certain thing. That's the hormone that keeps you driven to do certain things, right? So it is important for you to not abuse your dopamine stores and your dopamine receptors, right? This is the whole concept of this video. So there's a couple of things you have to understand. There's a baseline level of dopamine for a given person, and from person to person that might differ, right? There's a plethora of factors that determine your baseline dopamine levels, right? Those factors include genetics. Genetics play a huge role in that, and your nutrition, your sleep, your hydration levels, even there's a lot of factors that go into that, right? So in any given person, that person has a dopamine baseline, and the activities you do and how your excitement changes for those activities dictates where your dopamine goes from your baseline. Does it elevate? Does it go down from your dopamine baseline? And the degree of fluctuation too, that depends on the activity you do. So all in all, the exact same activity or the exact same protocol might give different results as far as dopamine goes to different people, because people have different sensitivities and different baselines for dopamine, right? So in this video, I'm gonna give you a couple of tips to optimize how your dopamine works. Your baseline, get your baseline to the optimal level and go from there. Then the second subtopic of the day, which is what kills your sensitivity to dopamine, right? What kills your sensitivity to it? So There could be a multitude of reasons why your sensitivity is no longer there, right? Why your dopamine sensitivity is no longer there. But I can sort of dial all those down, boil all those down to two different categories, right? One, the hyper exciting activities that spikes your dopamine really high and then drops it immediately, like drastically, right? That's the category one. And the category two is the activities that spikes your dopamine not as high as the first case, but it lasts a whole lot longer than that. We are talking about maybe hours. And I will go into the examples of each and give you guys an insight on how those things work. Take the first category, first scenario, right? Where your dopamine goes, sky high and just, drops down like a kamikaze plane basically. So in that case, I can give you a couple of examples. Let's say you watch pornography or consume cigarettes, right? Or consume alcohol or hard drugs or something like that, right? Something really, really exciting, like something that excites you beyond natural limits and just drops you right down, like slams you right down. So what happens when you do those kind of scenarios is that you guys are familiar with these things, right? You guys are familiar with the darkness, the misery, the pain you feel after you've done those things. That's your dopamine goes way below that baseline, right? So in these cases, what happens over time in your brain is that your brain will be rewired in such a way that the hyper excitement, that high, it becomes a necessity for you to function and go through the day, right? So that's where you kill your sensitivity to dopamine, right? Because you need a huge spike of dopamine just to get on about your day. So that's how you kill your sensitivity in the first case. The second scenario, where you do not go as high, but that's a prolonged dopamine high, right? So a couple of examples I can think of is you aging, or listening to music for hours upon hours, or binge eating junk food, something like that, right? You get the point. That sort of things. They will give you a dopamine high, not as high as the previous case, but it will last a whole lot longer. So what ends up happening in this case is somewhat the same scenario, right? Your brain will get rewired in such a way that the elevated and prolonged dopamine flush becomes a necessity for your brain to go through the day. Here's the kicker in this case. Once you are rewired, you are gonna do things just to keep that excitement going, right? So when you do things to just get that excitement, you are doing a bunch of junk volume with without any real purpose or any real benefit to it. Because usually, generally speaking, the things that actually better you, the things that serve you a purpose, the things that gives you that purpose in life, those things do not give you that high of a dopamine spike, right? So you are gonna do a bunch of things, you are gonna do a bunch of things day in, day out, but most of those things just fall into that junk volume category that serves you no productivity, no purpose, no nothing, no value whatsoever. So that's the real kicker in the second scenario. After the second part, moving on to the third part of this, which is why is the sensitivity so important? because it is really important. There's a real short answer to this, right? Since humans are this God's perfect creation, we can, our brains can gauge how excited we are to do a certain thing and rewire accordingly. Like, it's your brain is such a miraculous thing, and God, my friend, is good. Well, that stuff is going on again. Anyway, here's something that the brain of that perfect creation cannot gauge. God must have forgotten. But anyway, in any case, here's the thing: your brain cannot gauge the actual usefulness or the productivity or the purpose of what you are doing, right? So whatever that you are most excited about will determine, in most cases, not in every case, in most cases, what you are most excited about will determine how your brain is rewired, right? How your brain is wired and how you react, or how excitable you are to certain things, right? So I want to remind you guys this: we are not here to just enjoy life mindlessly. We are here to enjoy life in such a way that serves ourselves, that better ourselves, as well as the people and the non-human beings that are around us. So in order to do that, we have to find the excitement in the things that will help us serve our purpose to the world. So that is why the sensitivity of your brain for dopamine is super important. You have to keep it in check. With that said, that leads us beautifully for the fourth and final subtopic we are talking about today, which is do's and do nots to retain sensitivity. We are talking about dopamine sensitivity, of course. So there's a straightforward kind of approach to this, right? I'm gonna tell you 3 things that you should do, and the polar opposites of those 3 things will be the things that you should not do. The do's, the 3 do's are the things that you should do, obviously, and the polar opposites of those 3 things will be the do nots of the things that I'm gonna discuss under this. First do is to monitor and regulate your pleasurable activities. Have a cap on each pleasurable activity, right? For a week, on a weekly basis, you should have a max time spent on each pleasurable activity, right? So let's say you have 3 pleasurable activities, right? A, B, and C, right off the top of my head. So let's say you spend 4 hours on A, 3 hours on B, 3 hours on C, right? Just lazy math. So you have to have that maximum level to begin with, right? Then you can, from time to time, you can do this. You can play around with that. You can just reduce the time spent on each one and keep it there for a couple of weeks. You can do that, or you can just eliminate one thing completely and keep the other 2, keep the other 2 the same and just eliminate one. You can play around with that, and you can challenge yourself from time to time with that, because that only helps you develop the discipline. That only helps you rewire your brain to be better. That only helps you to just challenge yourself and be better overall. And the second do, which is eliminating the hyper exciting activities from your life completely, right? Those things should have a zero chance or zero allocated seconds in your day-to-day life, right? You should eliminate those things completely, and you should have your brain have your brain wired in such a way that a small dopamine spike will excite you, right? A small dopamine spike has to excite you. That way, you can have that room to the max potential of a dopamine spike in case you face something that requires that natural high. That can happen in rare cases, but in day-to-day life, that kind of activities should have a zero chance in your life, in your day-to-day life. That kind of activities should not take any part in your day-to-day life. The third and final do is restricting your dopamine boosting activities, like any dopamine boosting activities, in an unsustainable manner for a short period of time, right? This is an important discipline for you to practice from time to time. Doesn't have to be regular, doesn't have to be a weekly thing or anything like that, but from time to time, just to test yourself, just to restrict yourself in such a way and allow your brain to really maximize that recovery. I think it's a good change of pace, so to speak, right? Right off the bat, I'm not sponsored whatsoever to say this, but my personal favorite way of doing this is Bill Rancho style dopamine detox, right? That's a 24-hour process. I will leave a link to the video that Bill Rancho has done about the topic. That's also on YouTube. I will leave a link down below in my description to that video if you want to try that process out as well. Do nots. The do nots are pretty straightforward, which is, like I said, the polar opposite of what I just discussed in under do's, right? So with do nots, if you are not regulating your pleasurable activities, if you are frying your reward centers in the brain by giving yourself like a plethora of hyper exciting activities over and over again, if you are never giving your brain the time that it requires in order to heal and be better, that's basically the do nots, right? That's the do nots. But here's a bonus tip for your do nots, right? There's always things that you should stay away from. You should refrain yourself from doing rather than the things you do, right? The things that you should do, right? So the other thing that you should never do, I just talked about this in detail in one of my previous videos, so I will also link that video down in the description. So the basic idea here is to never stack up pleasurable activities one on top of the other. Let's say, for instance, right? For instance, if you are playing a game, there's nothing wrong with playing a game from time to time. But here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with playing a game in moderation, right? From time to time, in your leisure time. But also, like I said, it has to have that cap, right? If you are playing a game, for instance, if you are playing a game while drinking an energy drink that is pumped full of caffeine, or if you are watching something like a TV series or a movie or whatever, while snacking on something, or maybe even cuddling with your partner, that's something, in my opinion, that's something you should not do, like stacking up a couple of pleasurable activities one on top of the other, because what ends up happening is that the first activity gives you a certain spike, the second activity gives you a certain spike from the already excited state, right? So it racks up on one on top of the other. So that's a huge no-no. So that's the bonus tip for you in terms of what you shouldn't do. The bonus do not in this list, right? So that's basically the do's and do nots to retain your sensitivity for dopamine. The things we talked about are the fundamentals, so that may vary from person to person with their lifestyles, with their genetics, etc., etc., etc. Right? I just laid out the fundamentals of how to retain dopamine sensitivity, right? So with all that being said, I'm gonna end the video right here. I'm just sweating half to death in pretty much every video for the purpose of entertaining you guys or educating you guys rather. So consider subscribing to my channel. Subscribe, share, like, comment, all that YouTube stuff. Just help me grow this community. Help me reach this message out to more people, right? I appreciate that help wholeheartedly because that's gonna help me out a lot. So with that being said, I'm gonna end the video right here. Until next time, I'm High Value Guy, and may the Triple Gem bless you.